I just don't understand why anyone would make this. I mean, who puts cheese in a whipped cream can? Who could have done this?
This film is everything the first Suicide Squad should have been. Completely without any Jared Leto Joker. I kinda like this film. It's a bit wacky, it's colourful, and quirky, and fun, and pretty stylised. Not quite as stylised as Scott Pilgrim, which that kind of cartooniness would have made this film amazing. But it does have its own style, which is something. It's just about comic booky enough to feel like a live-action cartoon. And all those eccentric graphics moments that felt so out of place in the old film and felt a bit like an afterthought, it fits in here much better. It all works pretty well. And it's a very fun film to watch. Mostly because there's no Jared Leto Joker. And no weird dancing Cara Delevingne. Or big blue sky laser either like last time. Although that film did have that one shot, and that was kind of fun to be fair. Even if the rest of it was shit and didn't make any sense.
Like if you're worried about the bulletproof space Jesus turning into the bulletproof anti-space Jesus.
What use would the guy with the skin condition and the ironically psychotic psychiatrist be? That trailer's still pretty cool though.
The characterisation of Harley Quinn is much better than it is in the Suicide Squad.
Which I was quite pleasantly surprised by. However, I probably shouldn't have been, given that the last film decided to try and make you care about 16 different characters all at once, so you never really got much of a sense of her character. You just don't really get given the time with her to understand what her character's about, or really care.
But with this film, and with less characters, we get more time with her to see her character develop.
And I liked what they ended up with, which was a surprise. Mostly because I've never really liked Harley Quinn in any of the mediums that I've seen her character in. She's always just been a bit annoying to me, and always just seemed a bit kind of pointless. I never really got why her character needed to exist. With the slight exception of that one Arkham game where she's grieving over the death of the Joker. But she was still really annoying. Maybe it was just the accent that grated on me.
But here it kind of works for me. The characterization, not the accent. The accent's still annoying. But the characterization, it's pretty good.
Like where she psychoanalyzes everyone, that's kind of cool. Because now the ironically psychotic psychiatrist is actually an interesting character quirk, making her a bit more of a colourful and interesting and unique character. It seems like every film these days needs to establish and explore the characterization of at least 5 different characters, instead of just 1 or 2 in a lot of depth. But for me in this film it was enough for me to get the character. Or at least for me to get why she could be an interesting character. And with Margot Robbie's performance it really works. Particularly in the case of it being Harley Quinn as the lead character. I know it's an ensemble team story, but you know, it is basically the Harley show. Which with Margot Robbie's performance is not a bad thing. It just adds to the wacky cartoony feel.
I still find her being a villain, but also the hero, a bit strange. But then it seems all of DC's characters that are in any way compelling are all bad guys. So I shouldn't be all that surprised, really. The film's plot and conflicts are all small in scale, which makes so much more sense for this character.
And makes way more sense than a world-ending scenario that needs magic and a big blue laser to fix.
And where hordes of faceless armies need to be murdered.
So, the story. Harley, having broken up with the Joker, doing everyone a favour and sparing the world of any more of Jared Leto's Joker's shitty character design and performance. Even though I think Jared is still weirdly proud of it. If that video from is definitely not a sex cult that costs $6,000 to go to is anything to go by.
I know it isn't anything to go by, but it is a bit weird, right, that the first thing that he would do for his fans when he gets up in front of them is an impression of his worst character? Although I suppose he couldn't really go in front of everyone and release a woman suspended from a bag on stage. That might be a bit much for day one at Camp Jared. Oh no, I've just realised. That's just the most iconic and quotable character he has. That's just kinda sad. Maybe that's all he wants. Maybe he wants people to come up to him and ask him to do Joker. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, it's you! Do the line, do the line, do the line, say it, say it! I'm an idea. I think I might have gotten a bit distracted.
Because she's now no longer banging the Joker, she's lost the protection she gets for being the Joker's girlfriend, which effectively grants her immunity against everyone in the crime world. And they all hate her because she's a massive dickhead. So they all hunt her down to kill her until eventually she gets caught by Ewan McGregor. But she escapes getting killed by Ewan McGregor by cutting a deal with him to find a diamond that a little girl stole and ate. So whilst trying to get the little girl, and then getting her to poop the diamond out, she accidentally assembles a team of disgruntled women who rise up and fight back against Ewan McGregor and his henchmen, and then blow him up with a grenade. Which was pretty fun, and is so much better than the Suicide Squad film. And because it's so self-contained, I think it'll add to the replay value of the film. A thing the Suicide Squad could only dream of. It wasn't a super successful film, which is kind of unfortunate, but given that it's got the stink of the previous film lingering over it, it's probably not all that surprising. That and it being released at the beginning of a global pandemic didn't help, probably. So it's no real surprise that it was a bit of a bomb. But I think there's enough replay value in this film, and enough fun to be had, that it will probably have the cult following that the previous one's hot topic character design wanted it to have. And I kind of think it deserves to develop a cult following. Given that Margot Robbie appears to actually care about this character, I can see it working for a while if she manages to keep the enthusiasm and the studio continue to have faith and make films with this character. And there is plenty of stuff to do with that character. There's stories with Poison Ivy, and Catwoman to do, and Batman to do, and with the Joker. A Harley origin film with the Joker would be a very good film to exist. It's probably a little bit late to do it now with Margot Robbie, especially given that it's already been shown, although not in much depth or detail. But if there was a dedicated film to that part of her story, I genuinely think that with the right care and attention it could be another Oscar-worthy DC film. It is an interesting story about coercion and manipulation and abusive relationships, and I think that could be an amazing film. Either way though, there are plenty of places they can take her as this character. It could be like Margot Robbie's Wolverine, and she's diverse enough and well established enough for typecasting to not really be that big of an issue, I don't think. So she could stick with it for a good long while without it being too big of a deal. Maybe. I hope she sticks with this character and develops it further for a while at least. Thinking about that video game again, there are some similarities. Not so much in the stories, but in the reason why I like these stories. Because they both show a character dealing with loss. I think what would be really good for this film is to go down that road of exploring Harley Quinn dealing with the grief of losing the Joker. It does kind of hit that point, sort of, but there's a bit more weight behind the grief of him actually being dead than there is with just a breakup. Which just feels a bit melodramatic teen drama-y. Unfortunately though, the Joker established in this universe is a shit show. So it probably wouldn't work all that too well anyway, unless they retcon in a new Joker, or if they rebooted it. But then I think Margot is a perfect casting for the performance you'll need for a story with that much weight behind it. So it would be kind of a shame to reboot it and have to replace her. I know you can just say he died off screen and do it that way, which is honestly all that Joker deserves. He's a crime against character design, but you do need to establish the relationship more to make it mean anything. Imagine how much better this film could have been if they'd got their shit together right at the beginning. And there was a decent movie about the backstory of Harley Quinn where they established her relationship with the Joker over time. And then they made this film with her dealing with the grief of losing the Joker after he dies, rather than just her breaking up with him. Maybe the Joker having been killed by Batman. That could have been a good film as well. Although I guess that probably would have been a completely different film, and a lot less fun. But then I'll probably like that more because I'm a miserable cunt. Saying that though, the miserable cunt aesthetic has gotten DC 2 Oscars so far. So maybe I'm like one of those geniuses or something. The only thing a bit shitty with this film is that the fight scenes are a bit clunky. Well, in fairness, some of them are pretty good. The police station scene with all the smoke grenades is pretty badass. It's really stylish and really fun. But the end fight scene in the carnival place has really clunky moments. And it feels like it's missing all that cartoony colourfulness that's in that police scene. I think some Scott Pilgrim kind of wackiness would have worked quite well here. I mean, is there much need to be realistic? You could get away with not so much realistic realism in a Harley Quinn story, because you could just describe it away as all being from her wacky, crazy person perspective. Also, this is the chemical bath Joker arc, and that arc is almost exclusively reserved for the most wackiest interpretations of DC's properties. Some of these fight scenes are clunky enough for some people to hate it. Probably the type of people who haven't had their dick inside of a pussy they haven't got off Amazon before. You know, who will have the criticism that a woman doesn't have the strength to do that, so it's unrealistic. And I want realism. in my live-action cartoon film based off a fictional comic book character that's usually written for the target audience of mostly children. One thing I found quite interesting when watching this film, and then running through it a bunch of times again to find clips for all this bollocks, was just how different my memory of the film was compared to how the film actually is. Like, the biggest criticism I had was that the fight scene in the police station was the best part of the film because it was colourful, and all of the other fight scenes were a bit of a letdown because they weren't as colourful. Also, that fight scene in the carnival felt really out of place because it felt clunky and awkward, and I remember it looking a bit drab and boring compared to the police station. And how fun and colourful that fight scene was, and how colourful and bombastic the Ace chemical explosion was. I mean, to me it kind of did make sense for the end of the film to be darker in colour. You know, after all the betrayals and the hardships they have to go through. It kind of matches that point in their emotional journey in the story, and it helps make the climax feel like, you know, anything. And I guess I was just hoping for the end fighting climax to be as eye-catching as that explosion, instead of just this explosion. And in fairness, a big bombastic colour-y, explosion-y, endy thingy, is that descriptive enough? And for a climax, it does make sense to have a big visual release to fit with that emotional release. You know, of murdering the bad guy you want to see get murdered. And the little grenade explosion, while good in its own way for how subdued and surprising it is, I mean, I had an expectation and they fully subverted it, and that usually gets praised when Tarantino does it. But it kind of felt like when your partner finishes before you have, and it's like, great, okay, cool and everything, but like, you know, I was hoping for the big one. And you know, you can't give me the big one first and then end with the little one. It's not enough. It's just not fair. But when you actually compare the Ace chemical explosion to the carnival fight scene I thought was boring, there isn't really that much of a colour difference. Which I guess is a bit of a no shit moment because of course they're gonna colour grade the film so it's the same throughout. Just it's weird that I would remember the explosion to be way more garishly coloured than it is. And to remember that fight to be more drab and boring than it is. When it doesn't really, it looks quite bright. It looks just as colourful as those explosions. I don't know why my brain decided they were different and that one was better. I think I just saw an explosion in a smoke grenade and got all excited, and then got all disappointed when there weren't any more smoke grenades and chemical explosions. I know what it was. It was that pink and blue smoke grenade. It was cool as f***, and it made me wish everything was as colourful as that. I'm not sure why it would make me think the Ace chemical explosion was just as colourful though, but whatever. The clunkiness though, I think I know why I thought that. It looks like they use a lot of medium and wide shots, and very long takes as well. Which is great, and it's choreographed pretty well, kind of. But when a fight scene is choreographed like that, it can end up looking like a dance. And if everything isn't perfectly executed, it can be a bit weird looking. But despite me thinking that it wasn't all that great and a little bit clunky, I did enjoy how wacky and bonkers the whole thing is. And I do actually really appreciate the creative effort they put in with all the extended shots and all the choreographing they must have done. I don't think it worked out too well, but I don't think it often does really. It seems to be really quite rare that you get a good extended fight scene that works well enough to not look like a dance. But I would much rather watch that than a really obscured fight scene. I mean, it's a whole lot better than that shaky cam close-up shot rapid cutting thing you need to make Liam Neeson look like he can fight. There's still quite a ways to go before a choreographed fight scene looks as cool or as fun as what Jackie Chan would do. How cool would it be if a comic book film character had Jackie Chan-like fight choreography? Credit where it's due for trying something a little bit different though, and for doing quite a lot different as well. Like, I've never seen a roller skates and motorbike car chase scene before. Maybe one other thing I didn't like too much. Zsasz being killed off was a little bit of a waste. Mostly because I find that character to be the most unsettling of the Batman villains. Because he's some really creepy serial killer. But there is a lot of potential as a main villain because he's such an intimidating and sinister character. You could make him really terrifying. Like he was played really unsettlingly in this film. The characterization and the performance is kind of brilliant, but he just wasn't quite fully utilised as the menacing character he is. Apart from that face-off thing he does. But mostly he just felt like a bit of a waste really. Particularly to have him as just a secondary character. They did do a good job of making both of those bad guys. The performances were really good for both of them. One bit that really stood out to me was that scene where Ewan McGregor gets really mad and paranoid by some woman laughing, and then makes her dance and strip in front of everyone like an utter psychopath. It's so uncomfortable, it's amazing. It also helps him getting exploded by a grenade at the end feel much more cathartic too. It's just a bit of a shame though, because if they keep blowing through all these bad guys, then the only bad guy they're going to have left is the Condiment King. Although Harley Quinn versus the Condiment King does sound pretty wacky. And I have been saying I do want more wacky. I do actually want that film to exist now, to be honest. The characterization of some of the other characters is pretty good. The cop that gets ignored all the time is pretty good because you understand why she would end up just saying fuck this and becoming the vigilante justice cop. Although, as they like to mention almost constantly throughout the film, this is kind of a trope. But it worked, I guess. The Crossbow Lady was a good story arc because it was like a revenge flick happening in the background. But they also showed a little bit of the next bit that they don't show in the revenge flicks, where they have to deal with the after effects. Or rather dealing with life after your purpose for existence is gone, and the emotional toll that will have on someone who now has nothing to live for anymore because they've just been so consumed by all that revenge. They did show it a little bit at the end of Kill Bill, and The Princess Bride. But here she's around for a little bit longer after the revenge, so we get to see her replace that revenge, and find her purpose killing other dudes, with her gang of friends who also like killing other dudes too. Then again, she was kinda just used for jokes, so no one really cares all that much about her emotional character development. It was with this character that we had one of the best camera moments though. That scene where she goes into that restaurant and kills all those people having dinner, where that police cop woman's trying to work out what's happened. It's all like kind of from her perspective, so it starts with her assessing the scene trying to work out what happened. She walks off screen, then the whole murder scene happens, between the revenge lady and all these guys having dinner. The camera continues to pan round, and when everyone's dead she walks back on screen again. Well, mostly dead. It's kind of a Mind Palace flashback kind of thing, a way to show the workings out of a super smarty pants detective, but done in a quite simple and effective way. I mean, all they did was choreograph the scene and change the lighting. It all looks like one shot as well. Just a nice scene, to be honest. The kid that was just looking for a father figure, or a mother figure, I guess. And for some reason that's what Harley becomes for her. And Harley seems to be fine with that for some reason. I assume because she feels so sad and lonely from the breakup, so replaced it with a hyena and a child. She's a bit forgettable, and I don't really know if her character developed, or whether she was just so forgettable I forgot about it. She's just a sidekick child that's good at thieving. Kind of. Oh yeah, and there's that Banshee woman as well. I actually completely forgot about her. Which is kind of weird because she is actually quite a good character, and she's played her really well. But I kind of don't have anything to say about her. I mean, I did literally just forget about her. I'm just going to blame that on the film though for trying to make me remember 7 characters. That's just too much for me to remember, which is why I didn't. One thing I still don't really get is why Harley Quinn is the way she is. Her backstory is that she had a shitty upbringing, and then fell in love with a psychiatric patient when she was a psychologist, for the criminally insane. Which is fine, I think. But why? Why does a criminal psychologist become a criminal? Is that like a commentary on how psychologists are the real crazy people? They do a good job of this part of her characterization with the psychoanalysis she does of all the people she talks to. So they explored it a little bit at least. A little toe dip. But I just want to know how and why she went from a criminal psychologist to a psychotic criminal. That would be a good film, right? Although probably just Joker but with woman instead. Still want that film to exist though. I need it to. I don't know how she transitioned, and I'd like to. You know, without having to buy games or comic books or watch cartoons first. Just do the film, maybe. Also, I wish the end credits were done in the same art style as the introduction cartoon. That introduction cartoon looks so good. And then they end the film off with a completely different art style. It's such a waste. It would have been such a nice bookend to start and finish with the same art style. Also, it is kind of shitty design, a bit like using 2 different fonts. Although sometimes it can work, I guess. But that's not the point. Here, I just don't think it works. I was really hoping to see more of that cartoon style in the end credits. I was looking forward to it. and I was genuinely disappointed when it wasn't there. It put a real downer on the whole thing. The whole day was ruined. I immediately loved this film so much more than I ever thought I would or wanted to like it, especially given how low my expectation was, and it was all because of the fun I had in that cartoon. I'm guessing it was supposed to make you draw some parallels to the cartoon series, but honestly it just reminded me a bit of the Pink Panther. And I'm almost certain that's why I liked it so much, and probably why I wanted more wackiness as well. One other thing I did think of, and would have liked to have happened when I was watching it, is in that scene where she gets hit in the head and starts having a musical number dream sequence. That's the bit where she's been caught by Ewan McGregor after he realises she has no protection, and he's a bit grumpy with her for some reason. So he's like, I want to take her face off. But she's all like, nah mate, what? Come on, you don't want to take my face off. I can get you that thing you want. It's like my thing now, I find things and stuff. So he slaps her around a bit until she starts dreaming that she's Marilyn Monroe in the musical sequence. And then they let her go to find the girl who keeps diamonds, which was great and everything, but it would have been a fun way to get her out of a situation like that where she's horribly outnumbered, if instead of a fight scene they had a weird musical number that feels out of place, and when it's over suddenly she's free and surrounded by dead henchmen. So what I mean is, like, turn the fight scenes into wacky musical numbers so you don't quite know how she gets out of them. So it'll be like she's going through this red mist thing and doesn't know how she's doing all the kung fu shit. In her mind, she's just like doing tap dancing with cartoons or whatever. I don't know, it just sounds kind of fun. In my head at least. And I kind of thought something like that was going to happen with what the poster looks like. It reminds me of those cartoons with the stars floating around your head when you get a bonk on the noggin. So I thought there would be something like what I just described. Or at least maybe some kind of live action animation mix, hallucination-y thingy. Again, the character is supposed to be crazy, so you should be able to do it without it not feeling out of place. I mean, it worked for that bit in Deadpool where he gets stabbed in the brain. This film is actually an awful lot like Deadpool, isn't it? So, what's the message? What is it we can learn from this story? I guess breakfast is the most important meal of the day? Maybe? No matter how rich or powerful you are, you're no match for a grenade? Perhaps? When you break up with your boyfriend and you're feeling sad and lonely, you should kidnap a child? And a hyena, to make yourself feel better. No? If you're going to be kidnapped, always make sure you have a business card.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
Something wrong? You're sweating.
I like this film. So, watch it, or don't. It's not like any of this shit matters anyway. Bye.